You thought we were finished, weren't you? This one comes from Brazil. This is La Pisadera. I don't speak Portuguese, so I'm pretty sure I butchered that name. It is a demon that stands on chests, and that's when the nightmare begins. This demon is described like this. It is a woman that is skinny, with long, skinny, dry fingers, with nails to match, dirty and yellowish, short feet, bristly, unkept hair, with a large nose, almost like a falcon's beak, with eyes as red as fire, and a smile that is wide and menacing, with green teeth. She never stops smiling or cackling. That description alone will give you nightmares. That's supposed to be an evil laugh. I thought it was creepy. She targets those that go to bed with a full stomach and facing up. So, in other words, if you eat before you go to bed and you lay on your back, this is where it happens, right? Once she spots you, she will emerge from her hiding spot and stand or crouch on your chest, putting you into a comatose state where you will be conscious of everything around you, trapped in your own body, powerless to react. El Bombero is a kind of fae or spirit of Guarania mythology. This myth is typical of the cultural heritage of Paraguay and the north of the Argentinian littoral region. The Guarani maintained that it could be an indigenous Guaycuru, a people with whom they had continuous conflicts. So, in other words, a goblin. So the mythology behind it. It can become both friend and enemy of man, depending on his behavior. According to what is said, the man who wants to have this elf as an ally can leave offerings at night, such as tobacco, honey, or cane, which is brandy. Generally, people in the countryside ask him for favors such as growing crops in abundance, taking care of farmyard animals, or etc. But after asking a favor, they should never forget to make the same offering every night for 30 days. Because if they forget, they will awaken their fury, their innumerable evils in that home. It is said that if the whistle is imitated, the bombero can answer maddeningly. For this reason, so as not to offend him, they believe people prefer to name him in a low voice and refrain from saying his name in the evening. If you named it at night while playing hide and seek with your friends, be careful. Own your soul and sell it in the forest. This is how they translated it. So most likely they took it, translated it, and put it out because it doesn't make sense. So I'm guessing in Spanish it would, or whatever the native tongue is. Many witnesses in the field claim, even today, that they have seen it. You can annoy your enemies by throwing rocks at them or making yourself invisible and then moving tree branches or imitating the voices of wild animals. So, again, like I said, I think they just copy and pasted it and translated it into English, which when you do something like that, it doesn't come out very well. So this one is going to be many witnesses in the field, even to this day, claim to have seen it. It can annoy your enemies by throwing rocks at them. So not you. It's supposed to be it can annoy your enemies by throwing rocks at them or making itself invisible and then moving tree branches or imitating the voices of wild animals or appearing as a headless ass and the like. So in other words, a headless donkey. So whatever translation they used, it translated you to it or itself. So like yourself invisible, it's supposed to be itself invisible. Open the doors and windows violently. He announces his presence by a high-pitched whistle in the middle of the quiet of night. Seeking to scare people by chirping like certain birds when the sun goes down is another way of knowing that the bombero is very close by. It is said that he likes to hang around pregnant women because he thinks he is their father. Or also mothers with small babies who have not been baptized and is announced to them in the ways already mentioned. Mothers tell their young children that they should not go outside at siesta time because they can meet their caray fiar and he can take them away. I don't know what that word is. So, but it's interesting though, because El Bombero is nothing more than if he was in Mexico, he would just be a duende. And a duende is a house elf. You can make offerings to a house elf in the very similar fashion. Or if you offend them, they start messing with you, taking your stuff, hiding your things. It's just one of those things. But the ones that I know of, duendes, are mischievous little creatures. They're not gonna hurt you. But nothing in here said that it'll hurt you, except for where it's gonna smack you around and make you go crazy. And I'm guessing the word sonso is supposed to be like tonto, dumb. Like I said, it's a bad translation. Molt or experienced tremors. I don't know what molt is, but it just makes you, gives you tremors, shakes. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's just the translation is just it's gonna be bad on this one, but it's also a house elf because it's basically that. That's basically what it is. You can tell it to take care of your house and your animals and your property. It's a house elf. It's a mischievous house elf with some differences because this one doesn't do the whole father thing. So it does have some differences. I've never heard of a duende smacking you around, making you lose your mind. I know I've lost my mind chasing stuff around the house. Not chasing stuff, like I'll drop something or put something on my table or my desk, and then I'm spending the next like 2 hours looking for it because I lost it. Or so I think. I think it's duendes. But my family thinks I'm crazy. So, maybe it does make you crazy. Anyways, that was a small conversation about that. The first scary story we have today, I sound so chipper. Let's bring this down a little bit. The first scary story we have today is the Chariot of Death. Now, I've never heard of this one in Mexico. Let's get in it together. Mario walks home. It's too late. There is no one. Oh my God. This is written poorly because it's translated to English. Do I gotta tell it in Spanish? Nope. Same way. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna tell it in English and in Spanish. Let's show off my bilingualness here. Every time I hear the word bilingual, I think of the movie Next Friday. He's like, "No, Leroy, I'm bilingual. There's a difference." Sorry, side tangent. Me in movies. My bad. So, Mario walks home late. It's too late. There is no one on the streets. Mario walks in silence. He doesn't run. He is not afraid. He just walks through the streets at night to his house. Mario doesn't have a carriage or horse, so he walks. But Mario is happy. He is not in a hurry. He likes to walk the streets in silence. He likes to walk around the city at night. Suddenly Mario hears a sound. It's the sound of a carriage, but it's different. The sound is strange. The sound is horrible. Now Mario is afraid. He doesn't understand exactly why he's afraid, but he is afraid. Mario starts running. He runs through the streets to escape the sound of the carriage. The carriage is very close, and Mario is still far from his home. But he sees a park. Mario runs to the park and hides amongst the trees and bushes. From his place among the trees and bushes, Mario hears the carriage. He hears the noise of the horses pulling the carriage. The noise is very frightening. But Mario is curious. But he doesn't move from his seat. His fear is stronger than his curiosity. Mario stays in place among the trees and bushes for a long time. After a while, Mario falls asleep. He doesn't sleep well, but he sleeps all night. While he sleeps, he dreams. Mario dreams of images of a black carriage in his dream. There are also big black horses. The horses pull the carriage. The horses run through the streets, pulling the black carriage. Mario dreams about the carriage and the black horses all night long. In the morning, Mario wakes up because it is very cold. Mario is still afraid, but it's the day. Mario hears the noise of the carriages in the street. They are normal carriages. The noise of the carriage is not horrible, like the noise from the night before. Mario gets up and continues home. It's sunny, and there are people on the street, but Mario is still afraid. He arrives at his house, but Mario is still afraid. All day long, Mario thinks about the awful sound of the carriage. He thinks of the image of the black carriage from his dreams. He thinks about the scary black horses. Mario is afraid. In the afternoon, Mario wants to talk to someone about his experience, so he visits a friend. His friend's name is Caesar. Mario arrives at Caesar's house and explains the event of the previous night. I was walking home after work. There was no one on the street. Suddenly I heard a carriage, but the carriage was different. It had a horrible noise, Mario explains. Maybe it was the Chariot of Death, Caesar answers. The Carriage of Death? Mario repeats. Yes. People here say that death comes at night in his chariot, stops in front of the house of people who are about to die. When a person dies, death takes his soul in his chariot. Death collects all the souls during the night and then takes the souls to the other side. What is the carriage of death? Mario asks. I don't know exactly, Caesar says. Some people say that he is very big and elegant. Other people say it's a small and ugly. Some people say that the horse that pulls the carriage, and others say that there are many horses. Some people say that death itself drives the chariot in the form of a skeleton. Other people say it's a man dressed in black that drives the carriage. Mario thinks about the carriage. He thinks of the dream, images of him. He thinks of the black carriage and the big horses. Mario is afraid, but he is also curious. Where did you see the carriage? Caesar asked Mario. I didn't see the carriage. I only heard the noise of the carriage. I was in the park. I'm very curious, Caesar admits. I want to see the carriage. I want to see what it's like, who's driving, and how many horses there are. Mario is also very curious. At this point, he is more curious than scared. So Mario and Caesar make a plan. They make a plan to go to the park and see the Carriage of Death. Oh man, this is getting intense. At night, Mario and Caesar go to the park. There is nobody in the street. It is too quiet. Mario and Caesar do not speak. They listen. They listen for the sound of the carriage. Suddenly, Mario hears a noise. It's a horrible noise. It is the noise of the Chariot of Death. Mario is afraid. Caesar sees that Mario is afraid, but Caesar is not afraid. He's just curious. The sound of the carriage is very close. Caesar gets up and walks to the sound. Mario is paralyzed with fear and does not move from his position. A black carriage appears on the street. The carriage stops in front of the house, and Caesar observes the detail. The carriage is large and elegant. There are two black horses in front of the carriage. The horses have fiery red eyes. It is very difficult to see the person driving the carriage because all of his clothes are black. Caesar watches as the person gets out of the carriage and enters the house. He walks through the door like a ghost. When the person returns, he is as white as a ghost. The white ghost gets onto the carriage. It's obvious it's the Carriage of Death. Caesar is very curious and walks closer to the carriage. Suddenly the horses look at Caesar with their fiery red eyes. The person driving the chariot also looks at Caesar. The person gets out of the chariot and walks to Caesar. The person touches Caesar and Caesar falls. Well, he doesn't fall completely. Caesar's soul separates from his body. The person driving the carriage is Death. Death takes the hand of Caesar's soul. Death takes Caesar to the chariot. Caesar's soul climbs into the chariot. Mario observes everything, but does not speak. He doesn't scream. Mario watches in silence. Death looks at Mario. Mario observes that Death is a skeleton with long black hair. Suddenly, everything is black. Mario thinks he's dead. In the morning, Mario wakes up in the park. He is cold. Mario remembers the events of the previous night and runs into the street. His friend Caesar is dead in the street. Mario understands that it was not a dream. Mario saw the Carriage of Death. Mario saw Death. Now Mario is always home at night. He doesn't walk the streets alone. And every time Mario hears a carriage, he hides. It doesn't matter if it's day or night. Mario hides when he hears a carriage because he doesn't want to see the Carriage of Death. That is insanity. If I was walking at night, like 2024, right? There is no carriages. If I'm walking at night and a black carriage with two horses pulls up, it if I hear it, I know what that sounds like. I know what a carriage sounds like. I know what horses sound like. If I hear it at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm running my ass inside. I'm not staying out there to see what it is, because there shouldn't be horses at 1 o'clock in the morning in the middle of a city. But this was also like back in the day too, so horses were everything. Ooh. So let's get on with our stories, everybody. First, we're going to talk about the first legend that we're going to talk about is the Cannibal Girl of the Metro. Now, to let y'all know, I have never been to a state that had a metro system like New York or in places like Japan or China where they use the subway system. I've never been there. I've never been anywhere like that uses that kind of system. There's a couple of states in this United States that does that, but I've never done it, right? I'm not a big fan of public transportation. I have an issue with people driving me around. I get anxiety, a panic attack kind of situation. Oh, no, I don't like it. I don't like getting into cars, other people. I drive. So let's move on. So from what I've seen, it is that it can get hectic and overwhelming, especially for minors. So yeah, can you imagine, being a kid in a busy subway trying to stay close to your mom or dad or whatever, and it's just jam-packed, busy, bustling, people all over the place. It could be a stressful situation. But our story takes this to a whole nother level. The child that this happened to, the child in question, is a little girl named Rosarito Sanchez Sierra, age 8. So a little 8-year-old got lost in the metros of Mexico. On September 7th, 1972, the little girl was taking the metro with her mother to work like they had done 1,000 times before. On Metro Line 1 at the Tacubaya station, while rushing to get on the metro, witnesses that saw what happened said that the little girl had gotten separated from her mother in the crowded station. That's when her mother's panic began to set in. So the little girl gets separated. The mom starts looking around, trying to find her, right? Authorities that ran an investigation to reconstruct what had happened using information given by the mother and witnesses that had seen what had happened, or what they believe is what happened, is that once she got separated, she just got swept away. Like the crowd moving all as one just took her, and that's what happened. The police searched for weeks without finding anything that says that she was there. They couldn't find any signs of life, that there was someone, an active child or someone living there. But what they had found, or what they found is one thing, or a couple of things. They did find human remains. It could have been one of two things. Either people who were disturbed and decided that that was the only way to deal with their lives, in other words, taking their own lives on a train, or a dumping ground for criminals to dispose of their enemies. Now, this is the 70s, and during the 70s, talking about suicides was not a common occurrence. It was taboo. It's barely been a thing in our generation. So imagine back then. So the police did not take that they didn't take it as a serious thing. They didn't think that was the case. They thought it was just a dumping ground for criminals. Some of them might have been suicides. Others, the cops didn't believe this, right? So the search goes on. The police believe that the bodies and the child missing had no connections, so they continue to search. So they see the bodies. They're like, this has nothing to do with what we're doing down here. Let's move on. They keep going, right? Pretty sure they investigated the bodies, but that wasn't what these detectives were there for. So they continue searching. Then finally, the good news that they had been hoping for, on November 22nd, they had found the girl in the tunnels between the Tacubaya and Juanacatlan stations. She was alive, well, and alert, with only the exception is that she just looked homeless. Which is probably why it took so long for anyone to find her. because they were looking for a little girl that's scared, emaciated, because hasn't eaten like what 8 days, 17th through the 22nd. Yeah, something like that. Where's the date? Where's the date? Where's the date? The 7th through the 22nd. That's a lot more than 8 days. But yeah, so they were looking for someone like that, but they weren't looking for a child that looked completely homeless. The police held a press conference to inform the public that she was safe and receiving medical attention. After the conference, everyone had noticed that the girl was unusually calm, like she knew that she was going to be found safe. Being lost for 15 days, she was surprisingly calm, but the next part is where it gets kind of crazy. And this is where it turns into an urban legend. So, this is a missing child, it's an actual case. And now this is where it turns into an urban legend because, like I said, all urban legends usually have some truth behind them, and this is where that turns into an urban legend. The 8-year-old girl proceeded to tell her part of what happened. When she got lost, she had said that while in the metro, she was distracted by the large crowds and got swept away with the crowd. Losing sight of her mother, she did whatever she could to try and find her, but was unable to. Eventually, she got scared and proceeded to go into the tunnels. She had said, I was very afraid. I didn't know what to do. I had never been separated from my mother. I saw that there were some tunnels, so I went in. I stayed there in a corner, and even though it was dark, I didn't want to leave. But I started to feel very hungry. I had already spent hours without anything in my stomach. Hunger made me move. I walked and walked through the tunnels until I started hearing strange noises, as if they were animals. I approached the sound and saw something terrifying. It was the body of a dead man, and with him many rats, eating his flesh. It made me sick and scared, but I was so hungry it felt like my guts were eating each other. So I went over and did the same. Just like the rats, I chewed the meat little by little. It was hard and tasted like iron, but I kept up with the rats. I ate and ate. I realized that his left ankle was in very bad condition, as if it had been fractured by a fall. So I chewed there because it looked easier to bite. So much so that it came off, and I was able to eat the foot by myself, away from the rats. So remember, the remains that were found were remains, but apparently before they were remains, it was a body, and her and the rats took it apart. Now, this, like I said, this is where it turns into an urban legend. There's no confirmation whether it is true or not. Hey, what's going on? Kill the lamb. I got to mark wherever I interact so I can cut that out later. So, after hearing this, the police immediately looked for anyone that might be able to confirm this. They had supposedly found 3 people that could confirm this. They had seen a girl at the end of one of the platforms kneeling down and making strange noises, almost like an animal chewing a bone. After hearing this, the police had decided not to add it to their report. They had understood why she had done this because she needed to eat, and being so young, did not know any better. I mean, where else is she going to get food in the dark tunnels, right? It's either that or she would have eaten the rats. What authorities did do was to refer her to the Mexican Institute of Emotional and Psychological Trauma. So they sent her to an institute to get some help, psychiatry, things like that, because that has to be very disturbing to be so hungry that you eat someone's foot. That's how she survived though. She was lost for 18 days. How else was she going to survive? And there have been updates to a report, right? Because like I said, this is a real story, but the urban legend part is that little part right there that she ate somebody. And it wasn't added to the report, so at this point it's just hearsay. Um So what the an update to the report is that she lived a normal life, normal calm life. She had passed away in 2010 at the age of 42 after developing some stomach issues, and she passed in her sleep at ease. So that has to be traumatic. The only people that are going to know the exact truth would have been her. Now, Could she have taken the fame and fortune and been like, I really did it? Or could she have gone to the institute and psychiatric evaluations and the psychologist and everyone convinced her that it was just her mind constructing a way to stay sane? Because she had to eat somebody. She had to eat something. So maybe in her mind, they try to convince her that it was a body it was meat that she had found, so body, instead of her actually having to hunt and kill a rat. Her mind might have twisted it and said that it was already dead. It was a person that had died. That might be what they use to try to suppress it. That way, whatever, right? Like I said, the only people that know what really happened is going to be her, nobody else. But then again, it's been said that there was 3 people that knew what happened. But again, it's never been reported. We'll tell the next generations. This is the tale of the Tunda, mythology according to Afro-Ecuadorian worldview. La Tunda is a spirit that appeared to children and young people who were rebellious, spoiled, and disobedient to their parents. This entity did not allow anyone to see its face. It also had a deformed leg shaped like a pinwheel. When the spoiled children were playing, the Tunda would transform into a family member. This could be the mother, the sister, or an aunt. This Tunda would call them and call him and call him. Would call them and call them and call them and call them and keep calling them, and the child would obey. When the child came to his senses, he was already lost in the middle of the mountain, and at that moment she transformed into La Tunda. So in other words, this entity would call you and summon you into the jungle. And by the time you realized what was going on, you were already lost. When the abducted children were hungry, she would cook shrimp in their rear ends and feed them that way. She would stun them or hypnotize them, and she would continue taking them into the woods. In order to be freed, a ritual had to be performed with smoke, a drum, a cuñono, maracas, y guasa, where the father, the mother, the godfather were. The relatives would insult the Tunda by shouting foul words, and the Tunda would say to the boy, go away, boy. It is the words that burn. So in other words, curse words. After the ritual, the parents found the child stunned, dazed, and drooling a lot from their mouths, and when these children returned, they had a different attitude. They were already obedient, responsible, with better behavior, and they became better children. Coloron. This story is over. That is a crazy story. But it's also along the lines of Native American folklore, too, with the skinwalkers and mimics calling you in the reference of another person. You hear someone calling you into the shadows, but it's like your brother or something, and your brother's right next to you. Those things. It's crazy stories like that. And that's kind of what it is. It's kind of one of those things that was created to keep people in check, to keep children from acting up. Like I said, in Mexico, we had La Mano Peluda. We had, my mind went break, El Cucuy, blank. Uh, you know, witches out in the distance, glowing orbs to come and snatch you away. We had a bunch of different stories, but that's basically it's used to keep kids in line and in check because kids act up. We got to keep them safe, even if that means traumatizing them and scaring them. They got to be safe. We'll come back to this story again. We'll move on to the next one though, because that is an interesting story. Actually, let's see if we can find something else on it. Like I said, I got a couple of things on it, and they seem to be all along the same. Oh, this one's different. Nope, it's the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing. This one's in Spanish though, so it's the only difference. But it's basically this is from a Spanish teacher Today's legend comes from the African communities on the Pacific coast of Colombia and Ecuador. According to legend, the Diablo, the devil, seduced a beautiful African princess who arrived on a slave ship. Not knowing he was the devil, she loved him and had many children. One of these children is La Tunda, a very smelling woman who can change her appearance and put people in a trance by feeding them food cooked in her trasero or bum. So in this one, it's cooked in La Tunda's butt. And what's going on? And in the other story was in the child's butt. Just weird stories. Oops, I was going to type, but I didn't type. Ugh. Hear a lot of noises. Got somebody in chat. Yeah. If you're ever in chat and you want to ask questions, ask whatever questions you want. I have a knowledge of all things that are spooky, that go bump in the night. I've also done collaborations with Latinos to get spooky shit. That's always my favorite one because he does all those videos that goes over why we don't do things, and that's kind of the inspiration for what I do. But anyways, back to what we're doing. So yeah, this one it's important to note that the um I don't know. I don't know. That distracted me. That's a good question, but that has nothing to do with my topic of conversation. I'll get back to you in a minute, though. Let me read this out. It's important to note that the legend was very likely altered to scare enslaved people into submission, which is not okay. But if we look closer, as an Afro-Ecuadorian writer recently pointed out, perhaps La Tunda was just trying to free people from enslavement. As a free woman roaming the jungle, she simply wanted to bring more people to her way of life. So it's just, I don't know. These stories can be translated differently by many different people. And it could mean anything. So if you were to say, it's to keep kids safe and to keep them away from the jungle, well, those kids were most likely enslaved children because they were Afro descendants. Or you can look at it from the other side of the coin and say the Latunda was trying to bring them out of this enslavement, you know, and keep it that way, you know, and trying to keep kids safe. I'm doing two different things at once, so bear with me. Ah, there it is. I was looking for that key. Ah, there it goes. So it's just one of those things. Depending on where you look at it, what side you're standing on, it could be either a scary story meant to keep you in place and keep you from going out and being, you know, abducted by a disfigured demon creature out in the middle of nowhere. Or you could look at it as it's trying to free you from your captive where you're being held